So let's talk about the flop that is Joker 2. So, in case you haven't seen the movie yet, I do have a review up here on the channel. I have a non spoiler review and I have a review that's somewhat of a spoiler review, but it's really more so discussing the ending of the film. And in that video, I actually discussed that if you look at the ending a certain kind of way, there is a way that you could pull some brilliance from the movie. The problem is with the movie, not going to go into any spoilers here, but in case you want to see it, which you probably shouldn't, or at least if you're going to see it, wait for streaming. That's what I said in my first review. There are flashes of brilliance in this movie. There are good scenes and great performances. The problem is the editing, the story, the characters, and the script. All that stuff is not so great. But there's a little bit of brilliance, and I do think some people are going to like the film. However, most are not. And I remember saying in my review, about 80% of people are going to hate it, 20% might like it, and we're going to go into that. So discussing film, first of all, says here that Joker 2 actually ended up earning less than Morbius in the film's domestic opening weekend. It's a flop, unquestionably. That means that enough word of mouth got out, or there wasn't any interest in the sequel at all, that people just chose not to go see it. One of the things that shocked me about this movie is that a lot of people think that the worst movie of the year was Madam Web. In fact, and I haven't even seen Madam Web yet, there are people who have said that Madam Web is in contention for one of the top 3 worst comic book movies of all time. Madam Web got a higher cinema score than Joker 2. Joker 2 got a D. A D. And you have to understand, when it comes to cinema score is oftentimes very lenient. Some of the movies that people have hated throughout the years, I mean like hated, have gotten like B minus or B. I think Last Jedi, which was very divisive, even got an A. I could have sworn it did. I could be wrong about that. Don't judge me. But Joker is a flop that's almost unparalleled. Now, I've told you guys before, don't pay attention to Rotten Tomatoes. Do not pay attention to Rotten Tomatoes, especially before you go see a film, because the critics might not agree with the audience. I want to show you guys here the Rotten Tomatoes score. 33% for the reviews, 31% for the audience. That is extremely interesting, because one of the things I thought was going to happen is I thought that the critics were going to be relatively low in the 40s, and I thought that the audience would be maybe up in the 50s or 60s, but no, they are both below even these. So my guess, as far as 80% of people hating it, 20% liking it, wasn't that far off. It's more like 70% hated it, 30% liked it because of these scores. But again, that's Rotten Tomatoes, and I've always told you guys for years now that Rotten Tomatoes, like, it's best not to look at it. However, when you have audiences and critics agreeing, it usually means it's not a safe bet. There are some exceptions. And like I said before about this movie, I'm telling you right now, there's going to be some people that like the movie. In fact, there's one reviewer in particular, and I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want people to go attack this guy as a YouTuber. I just don't want them to attack it, who called the movie brilliant. I don't know about that. There are pieces of the movie that are brilliant. There are scenes in the movie that I think are really, really well done, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not changing my opinion on any of that. But the overall movie, it's kind of like Rise of Skywalker. Remember how in Rise of Skywalker, you had like 1 or 2 scenes that were pretty well done, shot well, performed well. Then you had the rest. The problem was that the rest of the movie didn't connect. That's how this is. And like I said in my video a couple days ago, I do believe, and I'm being genuine about this, this movie with some editing, I think could have been saved. I think if they cut down on the music stuff or cut it out altogether, and that wasn't even the worst part, if they tighten up the story a bit, tighten up the the character of specifically Harley Quinn, because that was a very underwritten character. Same thing with the Harvey Dent character. He was like 19 or something like that. They didn't really go too much into his story, as well as the really weird relationship between Arthur and the guards, which, like I said, I'm not going to spoil for you in case you care. I think that there's probably an edit of this movie that was better. I think that because Joaquin Phoenix acts his ass off. He really does. Credit to him. There was a story that is going around circulating now that during one of the screenings of this movie, and I don't know how true this is, that Joaquin Phoenix, after the film, or maybe even during it, went to go talk to the director, Todd Phillips, to tell him that the movie was terrible and to basically go off on him. Like, can you think about that for a minute? Have you ever heard of something like that happening? Have you ever, I mean, I know guys like Tom Cruise, like some of the bigger actors, and Mel Gibson, they can let their temper get away with them. And I'm not saying that Joaquin Phoenix is not a big actor, because he certainly is, but you don't hear that from Joaquin Phoenix. You don't hear stories of him being difficult to work with. I don't think this is a situation where he was the problem. I think he did the best he could, and he gave Todd Phillips the best performance he could, thinking that Todd Phillips would put it all together in the editing room. Because remember, movies are made in the editing room. Actors have been on films that they thought were going to be great and wound up being ass because of the editing. There's also been actors who have been in films that they were going to suck that have been great because of the editing, right? Because it's all about how you put everything together. So Joaquin Phoenix, man, straight up went off on this dude, allegedly. And there was a rumor that there was a rumor that they were going to spring this off into a Lady Gaga Harley Quinn solo project. There is no way that's happening. There is no way. And I'm just going to say this. Look, a lot of people have been saying that this movie shits on the first one, and it definitely does. That's the problem, is this movie went back on everything the first one built up. And instead of it being about the evolution of Arthur as Joker, it was more like the de-evolution into him being even more dislikable. You don't feel sympathy for him as much as you did in the first movie. Because the first movie was kind of like a tragic, like, fall from grace, right? Even though he was already a loser. This movie was just like, the hamster wheel. It didn't go anywhere. Despite, like I said, there's some good scenes. But, man, that Gaga project is not happening. Todd Phillips already said he's not working with DC ever again, as if they would. Clearly, what happened, folks, is that when he wrote Joker, he had a self-contained one-movie story that I think worked. And I think you can still watch that movie, pretend like this one does not exist, and still get enjoyment out of it, because it is a very well-made, very strong film. This one, though, is going to be one of those movies like Catwoman and like Marvels and Dark Phoenix that are just going to be put off as one of the worst comic book films of all time. Like, you could make the argument that this was worse than Batman and Robin, because at least with Batman and Robin, like, you could have fun with it. And there are a few scenes here you could probably have fun with. Don't get me wrong. But my God, the final product had a lot of issues. And this reflects it. So the movie's a bomb. It's a bust. What more can I say about it? I don't think they should revisit this world ever again. Not to say they shouldn't make any more movies about Joker. That's not what I'm saying. But the Todd Phillips, Elseworld story should be left on its own. I think DC got greedy. Warner Brothers got greedy and wanted him to squeeze out something that he just wasn't ready for. And he just didn't care. What do you think? Do you have any theories? Let me know down in the comments below. Take care.